Stabbed him. Wait, what's over there? Is it a skunk? What do you see? Is it a snake? Where is it? It's a creature, I don't know. It probably sprays, dude. Be careful. We're pretty sure it's going to spray us. That's totally a skunk. Like a little miniature Nicaraguan weasel skunk. I'm sort of watching myself. There he goes. You see him? I don't know, that's probably not in focus anymore at all, but this is still happening. Hey, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour, and this is part 2 of a 2-part episode on Paul's super long speech at Pisidian Antioch. So if you caught the first part already, this is going to work great. If you didn't, you might want to go back and catch that now. Either way, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, here we go. But, as promised, now on to the Jesus stuff. So again, he said, brothers, children of Abraham, and you God-fearing Gentiles, it is to us that this message of salvation has been sent. The people of Jerusalem and their rulers didn't recognize Jesus, yet in condemning him, they fulfilled the words of the prophets that are read every Sabbath. Though they found no proper ground for a death sentence, they asked Pilate to have him executed. When they'd carried out all that was written down about him, they took him down from the tree and laid him in a tomb. But God raised him from the dead, and for many days he was seen by those who had traveled with him from Galilee to Jerusalem. They are now his witnesses to our people. We tell you the good news. What God promised our fathers, he has fulfilled for us, their children, by raising up Jesus. As it is written in the 2nd Psalm, you are my son, today I have become your father. And we'll look at more of what he says in just a minute. But what's interesting here is that I don't know if Paul was saying this really, really fast in the hopes that he could just get through it before people freaked out and got mad, or if he'd really won over this audience and had their ear at this point. But whatever the case, this is a really fast version of like all the high points of confessional Christian faith as it relates to the life of Jesus. I mean, go back through it. So he was sent by God as a fulfillment. The prophets pointed to this. They rejected him. They executed him for no good reason. All of that was also predicted. God raised him from the dead. This is verified and attested to by a whole bunch of people. He hung around and people saw him, and these witnesses are continuing to go forth, and now the church is being built. Well, that's Christianity, and they just got it in that much Bible. Granted, that's like Dave Morneau size Bible, but still, it's only that much Bible. This is a very efficient way to communicate the basics of the thing. It's interesting, too, that he doesn't start with the gospel per se in the sense of here's what you need to do. He just lays the thing out in narrative, and he's going to connect a few dots here as he goes on. It says, the fact that God raised him from the dead, never to decay, is stated in these words, I will give you the holy and sure blessings promised to David. So it is stated elsewhere, you will not let your Holy One see decay. For when David had served God's purpose in his own generation, he fell asleep, he was buried with his fathers, and his body decayed. But the one whom God raised from the dead did not see decay. There's a ton to get into here, but for the sake of time, here's the highlight. Jesus was raised from the dead. Paul comes in and points to a scripture, or I should say two, that both demonstrate this connectivity between David and the prophets and the prediction that the Messiah would not see decay, would be raised back to life. And further, he's saying that David was pretty special. And we can all agree on that, can't we, guys? But when David had done what David was supposed to do, he just died, and then that was the end of David. But apparently, Jesus' purpose is much bigger than David's because he didn't stay dead, and he's still around, and he's still doing things. Now he's going to put the ball in their court. Verse, oh my goodness, 38. Therefore, my brothers, I want you to know that through Jesus the forgiveness of sins is proclaimed to you. Through him, everyone who believes is justified from everything you could not be justified from by the law of Moses. Take care that what the prophets have said does not happen to you. Look, you scoffers, wonder and perish, for I'm going to do something in your days that you would never believe even if someone told you. This is the hammer. This is the moment where he just explains, look, theologically, this is how you are justified before God. By justified, I mean made right before God. This whole thing in the relationship between people in Judaism in the Old Testament and between God even up until this time, and this time that we're reading about here, is predicated on the idea that people are a part of the flawed, fallen, imperfect world, that people are broken. And it's easy to think of the word sin and just think of naughtiness, bad behavior, and that's part of what it is to be broken. But the bigger theological picture here is that that brokenness also includes just living in a flawed, deteriorating state of being, entropy. The second law of thermodynamics. We're a part of what is breaking down. And so sinfulness isn't just naughtiness, it's finiteness. It's the fact that we are deterioratable and that outside forces act upon us and that we're not perfect. It's in general a state of falling short of the glory and standards of God. Theoretically, existing within this closed system as flawed beings who are imperfect, it would be impossible for us to do anything that would make ourselves perfect. And that's always kind of been the rub between God and people throughout the whole Bible, including the Old Testament. What Paul is saying is revolutionary for these people. What he's saying is that what they know to be true already, that is, you can't be justified by just doing lots of good things based on laws that you wrote that aren't even from God, that are meant to complement the Bible. The only way you can be justified is by a perfect being coming in from outside the system to make that which is imperfect perfect by the act of that perfect being. So rationally and theologically, Paul is making a lightning fast case that all of this stuff has pointed to Jesus, and that logically the only hope that anybody could have would be in a character like who Jesus claims to be. In other words, if you buy this, you should probably go with the Jesus thing. If you don't, continue on your way. And he uses this passage from Habakkuk 1 to make that point. Verse 42, as Paul and Barnabas were leaving the synagogue, the people stoned them, crucified them, flogged them, threw them out of the city. No, invited them to speak further about these things on the next Sabbath. Oh, how refreshing. When the congregation was dismissed, many of the Jews and devout converts to Judaism followed Paul and Barnabas, who talked with them and urged them to continue in the grace of God. This is brilliant. Now it's going to set up for some interesting stuff that happens in the next little passage we look at. But for once, this message landed somewhere and people were eager to receive it and at least consider the thing. Now, the next half of the story is really important to understanding this half of the story, so I'll save some more of my remarks until we get to that. In the meantime, that hurt a little bit. I'm Matt Whitman. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour, once again from Nicaragua. If you like what's going on, pass it along to a friend. I'd be honored if you'd consider a subscription as well. We'll see you soon.